Hey Eagle fans, it's EaglefanKarl. This is going to be my preview prediction video for the game in London against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And if you saw my tirade last week after the blown lead to the Carolina Panthers, you know that I doubted whether or not the Eagles could actually find their way to London. Well, apparently they have. They made the flight and they are over there now and ready to play that game. So that's good that we know that the coaching staff is at least smart enough to figure out how to get them on the plane, although they probably had some staff people helping with all those plans, so maybe we shouldn't give the coaching staff too much credit. And doing predictions for this team has become increasingly more difficult. Last year, once this team got on a roll, it was pretty easy to predict, what to expect because they were fairly consistent week in and week out. And that's been the biggest problem with this team this year is just the inconsistency. There's some weeks where they look like they're gangbusters and they've got it all figured out. After the Giants game, I figured, all right, this team's finally turned a corner. They've gotten it figured out. Everything's good to go, and I expect them to play that way the following week against Carolina. And if they had played that way but still came up short, I don't think I would have been as upset because at least there'd been some consistency to their play and maybe they just gave up a couple big plays or something like that like they're prone to do. But that's not what happened. What happened was the offense was uneven, the defense gives up the big lead again, and it just sort of is one of those things that's just more and more frustrating about this team is just how inconsistent they've been from week to week. So who knows what kind of team we're really going to get in London against the Jaguars on Sunday. The one thing that I sort of question also is, what kind of team is Jacksonville going to be? Because Jacksonville is actually very much in the same situation we're in. They're a team that's struggling, and they were a playoff team. They were a couple defensive stops away from, getting Brady off the field and going to the Super Bowl last year and being our Super Bowl opponent. So this could have been Super Bowl 52, but instead what you've got is two teams coming off deep playoff runs that are now both struggling in the first half of this season. And in the case of the Jaguars, I can actually understand why they are. Leonard Fournette was such a big part of their offense last year. They drafted him to be that workhorse back, and he really sort of proved them right in how he played last year. He was really the driving force of that offense. It really took a lot of the pressure off Blake Bortles. And as a result, I think that really helped that offense sort of succeed. And ultimately, that team is built around its defense as well. So if you've got a really solid defense and a good running game to go with it, you can go far in the NFL, even if your quarterback is an up-and-down quarterback like Blake Bortles is. And the injury to Fournette has really shown itself in the way that this offense has run in terms of the Jaguars' offense. You just look at their numbers in terms of running the ball. They're 23rd in the league in rushing the ball. They were at the top of the league last year in running the ball. Their overall offense is 23rd in the league. And it really starts to come into play when you're talking about how they perform in the red zone with scoring, because then they drop all the way down to 29th in the league in scoring. So this team has really struggled this year in terms of how it has moved the ball, and when it does move the ball, whether or not it's able to put the ball in the end zone or not. And like I said, a lot of that I think you can trace back to the fact that Fournette has been hurt and really has not, wasn't able to contribute much at the beginning of the year. And they did get Carlos Hyde, who was on the team last week, but probably really wasn't able and up to speed. So how much they use Carlos Hyde in this game is going to remain a mystery as well. We'll have to see how that goes, but it's entirely possible that he still doesn't play much and they really don't fully incorporate him until after their bye week. The other stat that's sort of interesting in this game is, we've got to ask the question, we've asked the question, what Eagles team are we going to get? We've asked the question, what Jacksonville Jaguars team are we going to get? The other question is, what Blake Bortles are we going to get in this game in terms of who we're going to be up against? Because if you look at his stats in London, he has actually played really well over there in the last 3 years. He's been in the league 4 years now. His first year, he was a rookie. He struggled when he went to London, and he struggled throughout the year. But ever since then, the last 3 games that he has played over there, he's 3-0 in those games and has decent stats to go along with it. They're not, in terms of yardage, they're really not eye-catching. But he has been putting the ball in the end zone versus putting it in the hands of the other team. That's the big one. 8 touchdowns versus 1 interception. Now, the one thing to all of that, I heard those numbers and it really started to scare me. I'm like, well, hey, maybe this guy just really knows what he's doing over there and he's really comfortable. And I looked inside the numbers a little more. I broke it out year by year, and you can see the breakdown there in terms of the year by year stats. And really, it's 1 year that makes up a good portion of those. And that was last season when they blew out the Ravens over there. The Ravens had never been over to London before, so it was their first time going over there, which of course it is our first time going over. But the big thing in that is the turnover battle was lopsided, and once again, they had Leonard Fournette that they could rely on. So I think Bortles was probably getting a lot of his stuff off of the running game that they had going at the time. So really, if you take out that one game he had against the Ravens, his stats, once again, are sort of pedestrian in the other 2 games. So the 3-0 doesn't bother me as much once I really started looking into it. But one thing you do have to say about Bortles is he's really sort of an average kind of quarterback. He's not someone that really scares me. But the main thing with him is we've got to get to him and make sure that he's under pressure. Hopefully then that leads to him turning the ball over. And I really think that's going to be the key with this game. If you look at the turnover differential between these 2 teams, both these teams are doing lousy in turnover differential. And that's one of the reasons why I'm sure you've got 2 playoff teams from last year who are struggling and are both below 500 this year, is because of those numbers on the turnover differential. The Jaguars are actually 31st in the league in turnover differential, so they're second to last. So really, when you look at those kind of numbers, it's no real surprise that they have been struggling in terms of wins and losses. But what about the flip side of it? What about their defense against our offense? And that's where I really start to get some concern, because the Jaguars this year, they've come back down to earth a little bit. They're not sacking quarterbacks at the same rate as they had last year when they were Sacksonville. In fact, they only have 15 this year, which puts them in the bottom half of the league in terms of sacks. So they're not being able to get much in that regard, but they still have been very good against the pass. And they are, they're number 1 in the league, actually, as it relates to passing defense. But that said, they are towards the bottom of the league when it comes to rushing offense. And that's really my concern, is because their strength on defense goes up against our strength on offense. We've been much better passing the ball this year than running the ball, at least lately. And that has a lot to do with the fact that our running backs are so banged up. And it really sort of raises the question of how exactly is our coaching staff going to, really account for that and hopefully end up doing something that's going to be able to allow our running game to get going. I mean, if you're going up against a team that's ranked number 1 against the pass, but number 25 against the run, I think it's pretty clear that you're going to have to try to establish the running game in this game. And that's, as a result, you're going to have to make sure that you're committed to it. And Corey Clement, Wendell Smallwood, those guys are going to have to really come up big in this game, because I really think that we're going to have to try, and we might even have to get creative and use like some wide receiver runs like they've done with Aguilar and stuff like that. Try and do some things that are maybe a little outside the box to get that running game going, maybe in a non-traditional way, just to try and see if we can jumpstart something against a team that's been struggling with stopping the run. When it comes right down to it, though, that's really my biggest concern, is that their strength on defense goes up against what we do the best on offense. And I don't know that we necessarily have the personnel to take advantage of their weakness. And I have not picked against, I looked, at my prior predictions. I have not picked against the Eagles in a meaningful game since week 6 of last year. That was the Thursday night game against Carolina. I picked against them. The only other time I picked against them was the game at the end of the season last year against the Cowboys, when it was clear that we weren't going to be playing our starters for most of the game. So aside from that one situation, I have not picked against the Eagles in a meaningful game since week 6. Unfortunately, that streak is going to end. I have concerns about this game. I know Jacksonville is used to going over there. The Eagles, it's going to be something new for them. and I'm not sure how they're going to respond to that. This team has just shown me that, unfortunately, they're inconsistent. You put all that up against another team that's going to be more familiar. Both these teams are going to be hungry. You can't say the Eagles are going to be hungry for a win and they need to get back on the winning track. Both of these teams are in that situation. So that's going to end up offsetting, I think, when you've got another playoff team that's struggling and they need this win as badly as the Eagles need the win. So I think that ends up being a wash. So for that reason, I think it's going to be a low-scoring, ugly affair. I don't think it's going to be real exciting. But I'm going to go ahead and pick the Jaguars to win the game. 17-13 is going to be my prediction for a score. Let me know in the comments below. Do you think the Eagles are going to win this thing? Hey, maybe you think they're going to blow them out and, Jacksonville's struggling and therefore the Eagles are going to be able to beat them easily. Let me know that in the comments below. Hopefully maybe you can make me feel better about this thing. If you think like me that they're going to struggle, let me know what your prediction is as well below. I'll check in after the game, let you know what I think. Until then, fly Eagles fly.